And as our, actually, let's do a quick get a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And I'll second. I see we don't have Mr. Danowitz here. We do have our Deb Poland, the member of the committee, as well as the mayor, Barry Walters, Tiffany McGinnis, and Carol Blanks as council members, as well as Gina and Rick, I see. So we're going to start off, though, with an objection. I move that we change the order of the agenda items to move executive session to the first business item. Is there any objection? There being no objection, the motion passes. Without objection, I move that we enter executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy and negotiations with respect to the following pending tax appeal. SFWH Property Owner LLC versus Town of West Hartford. Is there any objection? There being no objection, the motion passes. I invite the town manager, tax assessor, deputy corporation counsel, and attorney Michael Collins to join us in executive session. At the conclusion of the executive session, we will be back to this link to complete the meeting. Thank you, and I'll see you all on the other side. All right. Give Carol a chance to get back. Anybody else? All right, you're right. Are we back in?
Good afternoon. Yes, you are.
Okay, we're back from executive session. And first order, I move to ratify the settlement of the pending tax appeal, SFWH Property Owner LLC versus Town of West Hartford. As the 2021 grand list, the fair market value of the land and buildings located at 1445 New Britain Avenue is $30 million. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing no indication for discussion, I call for a voice vote of the committee members. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. And we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. Mr. Ledwith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. First resolution we have tonight is a fairly routine resolution amending the Community Development Block Grant and the Community Development Block Grant Housing Rehabilitation Fund for fiscal year 24-25. We are going to transfer $50,000 from our private, public, and partnership fund to the Housing Rehabilitation Program to meet the grant and loan request for this fiscal year. So that account would move from $160,000 up to $210,000 after this transfer. Then the resolution itself, it mentions Fund 13 and Fund 14. Those are where the accounts are located right now. So more accounting in nature from that perspective. But I'll pause there. Happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Deb.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. To refresh our memories, this fund is the one that helps low-income homeowners with projects that they need to renovate their homes or make improvements.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And what is the income limit? Do we know that?
I do not know that.
I feel like it might be 60% of AMI, but I'm not 100% positive about that.
Yeah, let me, I'll have that number for you for when we have it at the council meeting.
Perfect.
Meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
I believe you're right.
Those are all my questions. I would support this, Mr. Chair.
All right, as would I. And if there's nothing else, we can move on to the next item.
Next up, we have the resolution amending the fiscal year 23-24 general fund budget to fund transfers to the capital non-recurring expenditure fund, the risk management fund, the utility services fund, and to accrue for expenditures related to tax assessment appeals, which we just discussed, as well as contract settlements. So we're very fortunate, again, to have another surplus for this past fiscal year, for fiscal year 24. Our surplus ended up being $9,692,946, which follows fiscal year 23, where we had an $8.4 million surplus. The primary drivers for both this year and last year, as a matter of fact, are the difference in our tax collection rate, which is one factor. This year we budgeted 99.1%, and our collection rate ended up at 99.4%, which is very similar to last year and in past years as well. The two outliers for this fiscal year and last fiscal year that have been very beneficial to us are the investment income derived from the Treasurer's Short-Term Investment Fund, and then the Municipal Revenue Sharing Grant, which we've received for the last couple of years. And the Short-Term Investment Fund rate, we budgeted at 4.2%. We took an average of what we felt. We knew that the number was coming down, as we discussed during the budget deliberation process, but we had to kind of estimate where that number might be. We budgeted at 4.2%, and our average ended up being 5.5%, over the course of that fiscal year. So that ended up with a surplus. Right now, that the 7-day yield on the stiff rate is now down to 4.58%. So the number is starting to decrease over time. And then the municipal revenue sharing grant was a grant that was distributed based on state statute that called for excess funds that were in the municipal revenue sharing grant to be distributed to municipalities based on a formula that included the mill rate, as well as population. And we've been very fortunate to have received this grant for the last 2 years. However, we were informed this year that we will not be receiving that grant for the fiscal year that we're in right now, so for FY25. So, however, since this revenue source was unpredictable, we did not budget for it, so it won't negatively impact our FY25 budget, but we will not be seeing the surplus associated with this grant as we move past the fiscal year 25 budget. So with that $9.6 million surplus, we're recommending that we transfer $2.5 million into the town's risk management fund and utility services fund. You'll recall that during the budget adoption back in April, we did lower our contribution to both the risk management fund and the utility services fund to adopt this year's budget. So in a sense, this $2.5 million is paying both of those funds back. We would appropriate $750,000 for tax assessment appeals. And then we would have $425,000 set aside for contingency contract settlement. So we had a number of union contracts that were open heading into this fiscal year that have since been finalized. And then we have 2 more active negotiations taking place right now, one with our streets union, and then soon to be open with our fire union as well. So that would leave a balance of $2,221,821 to set aside for our unreserved fund balance. That would bring our fund balance from 9.9% up to 10.1%, which does align with our fund balance policy. That does call for 1/3 of our surplus to go towards fund balance, and will be, I think, well received by Standard & Poor's when we go to issue bonds next month. So our fund balance has risen over the last 2 years from 9% to 9.9, and then up to 10.1 should the council move forward with this recommendation with this year's fund balance. So I will pause there through you, Mr. Chairman, and turn it over to the council, and happy to answer any and all questions that you may have.
Thank you. I'll open it up. Any questions or comments? Always better to have a surplus than the alternative.
It is for sure, and we've been beneficial the last 3 years with significant surpluses, but I do think two of those factors that drove the surplus are going away. So I think next year our conversation will be a little different. It won't be quite as significant a surplus going into next year at this time.
Right. Thank you very much. Mayor.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Winograd, Chairperson. A couple of questions. Actually, this one is from Tiffany, but she's not on. Is why is that municipal revenue sharing going away? That was the first question. So maybe you want to answer that.
I can. Yeah. So thank you, Madam Mayor. So the municipal revenue sharing grant is a state appropriation, and they have a budget within the state budget for the MRSG, and the statute calls for, once those funds are expended at lower levels than where the town of West Hartford is, any excess funds left in that fund are appropriated to the remaining municipalities throughout the state. So I can get that distribution as well, but there were a significant number of municipalities who were like West Hartford, who were beneficiaries to the state having excess funds left over after that appropriation. We were told just within the last 2 months that account would not have any money left over in it for that grant to be distributed in the manner that it was for the last 2 years.
Thank you. And I do want to just reiterate one of the comments you said, which I think is really important when we are looking at obviously being a AAA bond rated community and how we treat a surplus, that we don't do something that is a one-time benefit. We spread things out over time. We plan for them. But the surpluses that we have used really have gone to build up reserves in and not to fund necessarily ongoing operations in any way, or things that might dig a hole for us. This was an opportunity for us to build up those reserves, which really would have been challenging if it had been built into the mill rate at where this money came to us. We couldn't budget for it because we didn't know it was coming. We didn't know how much was coming. And so that's, one of the benefits of how we have used it. And now we are at a 10.1. We're supposed to be closer to 15, I think, by guidelines of the of our rating agencies, but we've made significant progress. And so I just wanted to reiterate that. So I'm obviously, we have really appreciated this grant. We have and thinking about how we're heading into budget season, we've got some significant contracts that we've entered into that will be driving some of our numbers, and we are not going to be receiving this excess money. The governor will be coming out with his budget in a couple of weeks, from what we understand, and usually those are numbers that we use in our budgeting process. But it's going to be challenging for sure. So. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And anybody else? Do not see any. And this will come on to our be brought up at the next council meeting.
Yes, Madam Mr. Chair. Sorry. Everything we're discussing tonight will be on our agenda for next Tuesday's council meeting. So
Great.
This would be included among those.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. Let's move on to the next item then.
Sure. So next up, we have a resolution appropriating a federal grant for a speed management pilot program, which we received through the Safe Streets for All grants program. This is the first of 2 Safe Streets for All grants that we have received. This one we received right towards the end of last year, and it was an award for $836,259 for a speed management camera pilot program. And this grant has a federal share of $669,000 and a town share of $167,000. Which we will fund through our fiscal year 25 traffic system management capital improvement program. So this program, along with our new red light camera enforcement program, which we received with the second Safe Streets for All program, which we look forward to discussing that further with the council when that appropriation is finalized, will be critical components of our Vision Zero plan. And we will, I know we have a community planning economic development committee coming up later this month. We will talk about some of the details of this program at that meeting, but certainly happy to answer any questions that the council may have tonight with regards to the grant itself. So, but essentially, we will be setting up a pilot program that will set up 15 speed enforcement cameras around town. Because it's a federal grant, it is a little bit more cumbersome than had we just been dealing through the state. So we have some requirements that we have to meet through the federal government. as well as some significant requirements that we have to meet through the state as well. So we're in the data collection and analysis stage right now of this program, and then we will be finalizing a draft of our automatic enforcement traffic's draft plan that we would have in front of the council later this winter. We will require a ordinance to be drafted and signed off by the council, followed by a public hearing, of course, with our public having the input into this type of program as well. So a lot that will be happening over the next couple of months. But again, we'll keeping the CPEG committee apprised of that progress, and ultimately the council as well. But with that said, I'll pause there and happy to answer any questions that the council have.
Thank you. It's all very exciting, and I'm sure people are looking forward to getting some cameras up.
Yes,
I've observed the need, and yeah, I think there'll be lots of eager eyes on getting this going.
absolutely.
But and certainly we appreciate federal and state help. Any particular questions on the grant?
Just a quick one, Mr. Chair. Maybe you mentioned this, and I might have missed it, but is the expectation that this grant plus our match will cover the full cost of the planning and implementation of the 15 cameras?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to Councilor Pullen's question. Yes, absolutely. This will cover the cost of the program in its entirety, which will involve personnel costs as well. And the really great, I don't want I use the word great loosely here, because it's most important to us, and we've talked about this, is the safety of our streets. But with these types of programs, there will be revenue generated that will come directly to the town as well. And we will be discussing the use of that revenue with the council. But we would envision a recommendation that would involve setting up a Vision Zero fund, for lack of a better term, and funneling those the revenues that we're receiving through this program into future Vision Zero projects as we move over the next couple of years. So the revenue from these programs will certainly fund most things we will want to accomplish through our Vision Zero action plan. So yes, short answer, long answer to your short question was this grant will cover the cost of setting up the program, with the caveat that we will get additional revenues through the ticketing of violators of our speed limits, and eventually our red light camera program as well.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And do we have, put you on the spot, do we actually have a time frame when we think these will be able to be operational?
Yeah, so we will, as I said a moment ago, we're working in the process now of drafting a plan. We will, in the coming weeks, have a public information meeting, which both the federal government and the state requires us to have prior to finalizing the plan. And then with all that said, we are envisioning the cameras being installed on or around July 1st of 2025. So this would be revenue that we would see coming in for the fiscal year 26 budget time period. At the same time, the red light camera program, which, as I mentioned earlier, was part of that second Safe Streets for All grant that we received more recently. There are a lot of similarities between both of these programs. So we see the process for the red light camera program going a little bit quicker than this one, because we'll have learned a lot through the setup of this program, and some of the data that we'll use to put into our plan for the speed enforcement will also be included in our red light program as well. So coming later this year in 2025.
Excellent. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as the ordinance goes, Rick, could you just explain, are we going to be setting some fee, or is that determined by the state, the violations?
So the state has recommendations and we would come forward to the council with those recommendations. So it's roughly $50 for the first, $50 to $75 for the first violation, and then some other number if for repeat offenders. So the ordinance will allow us to not only run the program itself and the parameters that would be involved with that program, but the fee itself would also come under that ordinance that the council would sign off on.
And the follow-up question to that is, so it doesn't matter the speed necessarily, it would be by number of violations. Is there anything for excessive speed, like when you actually get a ticket from a police officer?
Great question, through you, Mr. Chair. So that's a little less clear to us, and we'll work with the state on that one. So our understanding is that it's a set dollar amount for violating. So going 10 miles over the speed limit would be, say it's $50. That's the number we set. It's a little less clear in terms of if you're going 80 or 90 miles an hour in a, say a 35 mile an hour zone. What our opportunity to additionally pursue other action with that driver, including higher ticket prices or, violation of other laws that may be involved with that. So we'll work through all that and have all those answers in line for those conversations that we'll have with the council on the ordinance. But yeah, we need to look a little bit deeper into that one.
And just one more question I had is in processing.
Yep.
We have discussed, and we will be discussing, you are discussing it with our Vision Zero Task Force, or our Vision Zero Advisory Commission, sorry, on a reduction of speed limits throughout town. Looking at our speed limits, the state has given municipalities a little bit more flexibility in local roads with determining. So could you program a grace period or something with that? That's just another question. Thinking about, if someone expects a speed limit to be 35 on a street and it then goes to 25, could there be a possibility of a month grace period or whatever, and kind of give people notice and how we do that? I don't know.
Great question, great point as well. So we are exploring the possibility of lowering our speed limits on certain roads townwide to as a number, as the mayor mentioned, 25 miles per hour on town roads. And we will have to factor that into our conversation with the state and, developing this plan itself. So with the plan itself, for example, if we weren't doing anything with the speed limit, there's a 30-day grace period with the program anyways. So whether we have the ability to take that and factor into maybe having a longer grace period, that's a good question, and we can follow up on that with the state.
Thank you. Mixed emotions on that, but
yeah.
And unfortunately, I think we are going to see a significant amount of revenue initially. I hope it changes people's behavior and we don't have as much revenue. That's the goal. But
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Walters.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding that revenue, how much of that revenue would stay in West Hartford and how much would go to the state?
Thank you. Great question through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Walters. So all of the revenue stays with the town. Yeah.
Right.
So, and to the mayor's point, some of the numbers that we're talking with a couple different consultants right now, and we'll end up working with one of them through this process. It will be significant based on their experience with communities around the country that have done this, at least initially. But to the mayor's point, we're just hoping it changes the behavior and slows people down. And, you know, with that, we'll see a corresponding decrease in that revenue.
Great. No other comments? Thank you. We'll move on to the next item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So resolution appropriating an auto theft and violence grant to the police department. So as always, our PD works diligently in uncovering any grant they possibly can. This one is a $35,000 grant through the state, which will allow us to proactively reduce auto thefts and violent crimes through increased patrol and investigations. We will also be able to work with units within the state police, like the Bureau of Special Investigations, Statewide Narcotics Task Force, Gun Tracing Task Force, Connecticut Regional Auto Theft Task Force, statewide Organizational Crime Investigation Task Force, a whole host of number of task force that we routinely work with this grant will allow us to even work closely with them on solving auto thefts and violent crimes that may occur. So we will certainly keep the Public Safety Committee apprised of our work through this grant as we move forward. But happy to answer any questions that the council had, at least initially, on this grant.
Any hands? I don't see any. Ms. Blanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Rick, just a quick question, kind of going back to my contract management days. Will that amount cover personnel? How will that be broken out? And based on that personnel's time and their rate of pay?
Thank you, through Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Blank. So yeah, we would, part of that grant can be used to offset overtime, for example, if we're setting up, you know, some detective work around a, you know, recent car theft or something like that, or a violent crime that may not have happened in West Hartford or Hartford, and working closely with the Hartford PD. So yeah, routinely with these grants, we are allowed to offset our personnel costs or overtime costs that would be involved.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay. No other questions. We can move on to the next item.
Yep. So the next one's a resolution appropriating the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection Trails and Greenways grant. It's a pretty exciting new grant that we received through the state, which will allow us to do a comprehensive study of the Tri-Point Greenway concept to connect existing multi-use trails in West Hartford, and then connecting them with Hartford and Newington. So our trail certainly would be the Trout Brook Trail, which phase 3 was just recently completed, the final phase, which was Park Road to Jackson Avenue. But it would take Trout Brook Trail down at New Park Avenue, and then ultimately would connect with the Hartford South Branch Trail, which would be running parallel to New Britain Avenue from Hartford and ultimately we hope into West Hartford through this study. And then we would then connect those two trails ideally with the Connecticut, Newington's Connecticut Fast Track Multi-Use Trail. So in the end, we'd be able to connect very diverse neighborhoods among those three communities, underserved areas, major employment hubs, especially as you take Trout Brook Trail and head north, but certainly along New Britain Avenue and then heading into Newington as well. So once the study commences, we'll keep the Community Planning and Economic Development Committee apprised of when that officially starts, as well as the work that is encompassed along the way with that study. So it's very much long-term in terms of making those connections, but it's a step in the right direction with this particular study. So I will pause there through you, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions that the council had.
Absolutely. As one who, I've certainly done it make that on Trout Brook to the Newington to the fast track trail doable. But yeah, it would be nice to have it a little more protected and plotted out. So very much looking forward to it. It's a great trail.
It is.
We have a great trail too, but the fast track one is also a nice one, underused. Madam Mayor.
No, it's a very exciting. Is this CROG? Is CROG the one who has? Yeah, just
Yep.
want to. Yeah.
Yep, it's associated with CROG. The grant itself was through DEEP, but as always, CROG is exceptionally useful to us and all of our neighboring communities and accessing all of these types of grants. So this is one of them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Matt Hart.
Yes.
Anything else? Anybody else? Nope. All right. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the grant.
Thank you.
Great work getting it. So let's move to the next item, which.
So this one's a resolution appropriate American Rescue Plan Act grant funds, which you may have thought we were done with. So you'll recall that our last council meeting on December 10th, we needed to obligate all of our remaining ARPA funds by December 31st, with the ability to spend those funds through December 31st of 2026. But we had to have everything contracted by the 31st. So following that meeting on the 10th, we had several projects that had since come in after the 10th under budget, resulting in an additional surplus of $231,947.41. What we are recommending is that we set up an interagency agreement with the Police Department Animal Control Division, which will allow us to make this contribution towards our new animal control facility. So it gets us, even though we haven't contracted with that developer yet for the facility, because ARPA allows us to make these contributions into this interagency agreement only with public safety. So we'll be able to put this money into this agreement with the police department, earmark it for animal control facility, and contract with the developer of that facility after December 1st. But this contribution will go towards the cost and help offset the cost of the animal control facility. Now we are done with all of our appropriations for ARPA. We'll talk more about ARPA over the next 2 years on all the projects that the council has funded with those dollars, but this will allow us to earmark these funds and offset the cost of the animal control facility.
A great use. The mayor and I think once you remember when we first had a presentation on the need for upgrading to the animal control a few years ago. As I'm sitting here with my dog making noise and groaning at me, giving me a sound effects for this discussion. But I'm glad that all worked out. Yeah, our evergreen discussion, but now we really are done.
Yep.
It's done for sure. Okay.
We are done for sure now.
All right, and thank you for the work on and figuring out how to do that. I didn't realize we
yeah,
worried about the flexibility after January 1st, but
give credit to Patty Lewis, who has been very instrumental to all of us, including our Corporation Counsel's office as well. She knows the American Rescue Plan Act like no one else does, and she's found some creative opportunities for us to take advantage of, this being one of them. So
yeah, fantastic work on that. Anybody have any questions or comments? I don't see any, and I think that is at the end of our agenda. I don't think we have
that. It is, yes.
I don't think we have any other business. Communications or staff reports we've heard, and we did our executive session. So unless I'm mistaken, we'll adjourn the meeting. And thank you all for
Very good.
the evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, take care.
Have a
Have a
great
good
night.
night.
Good night.
Can I